Damn it all. I can't take this anymore. Lyle clawed at his festering sores, fury sparking from clenched teeth. Days without washing had caked him in sour stink. In this god-forsaken stockade, even hauling water was a pipe dream. The creek had frozen solid. He shot a glare at Kaelan, resentment boiling over. The Luo family's pampered life is what most people would kill for. You, on the other hand, had to go and get us branded as fugitives. Kaelan chewed his coarse cornbread and said nothing. He knew Lyle wasn't reasonable. They both had the same millstone crushing their hearts. Hurled from the modern world into this hell, silk robes and fine food traded for blizzard scraps, anyone would go half mad. But what would complaining get them? Duller blades. Swifter deaths. Kaelan swallowed the last of the cornbread in 3 bites and brushed off the crumbs. I'm going to train. The snow swallowed his silhouette. On the training ground, the stench of rusted iron bit at the nose. Racks of 18 weapons bristled with icicles. Dozens of followers hacked and slashed, their blade winds churning up snow spray that shrieked against the leaden sky. Instructor Sun's voice knifed through the gale and smashed against every face. The saber's easy to pick up, but that doesn't mean you flail like maniacs. The whirlwind slash keep the arc tight. You think this is some peasant dance? Garen spun into a slash, the blade swift and vicious, but his body wobbled like it was about to fall apart. Instructor Sun snatched the saber from him, booted feet grinding frozen snow. Watch. Before his gravelly voice faded, Instructor Sun bent his knees and power exploded from his spine. The dull thrum of twisting sinew snapped like a bowstring as the blade light whiplashed back. The edge shredded the flurry of snow, carving a bolt of cold lightning through the air, then locked dead still at 90 degrees behind him. The steel didn't quiver, as if clamped by an invisible anvil, only the residual howl of sliced wind keening low. Kaelan's pupils shrank. That slash, faster, steadier than the ambush in his dreams. Force not spent, momentum lingering. If only he'd known that move back then, never empty your strength, then you still have options. Instructor Sun planted the saber and stood it upright, voice crashing like a bell. Hit or miss. If your power isn't drained, you've got to follow up. Garen mumbled his excuse. But when I go fast, I can't stop, that's lack of practice. 1,000 cuts a day, and even the dumbest bones remember. Instructor Sun's gaze swept the field and snagged on Kaelan. Kaelan, did you grasp it? Kaelan sucked in a lungful of freezing air, stepped forward, and took the saber. The blade felt impossibly light, barely 3 pounds, nothing like the massive broadsword from his dreams. Kaelan replayed Instructor Sun's power trajectory in his mind, twisted into a bow stance, and let the explosive force uncoil from his waist. His right arm whipped into the reverse slash. Shiang, the edge tore through the wind with a piercing shriek. Some buried memory deep in his limbs jolted awake at the sound, muscles fine, tuning on instinct, killing the berserk momentum. The blade light flashed and stopped exactly where Instructor Sun's had frozen. Half an inch off. His wrist trembled, but the blade stopped. Instructor Sun's brows shot up, astonishment flaring in his eyes. Damn fine instincts. With bones like yours, why the hell are you only starting now? Kaelan cupped his fists. Please, Instructor Sun, guide me. Instructor Sun strode over, iron fingers clamping Kaelan's wrist and wrenching it into the precise position. Remember this angle. Every day, cut until it's carved into your marrow. The root of all martial skill in the world is nothing but practice makes perfect. He shot a sidelong glare at the followers. You all waiting for Daddy to spoon feed you. Learn from Kaelan. Anyone who hacks a crooked slash today goes hungry. Their gazes skewered Kaelan like a cluster of poison, dipped needles. Kaelan's mouth twitched. He'd managed to piss off every comrade on his first day. Instructor Sun was already walking off the field, motioning for Kaelan to follow. The Bloodshed Art is ferocious and tyrannical, suits your age perfectly. His tone dropped, steeped in rare gravity. But its flaws are just as brutal. Sooner or later, you'll need the Blood God Art to neutralize them. And the Blood God Art ain't some roadside cabbage. Even core followers have to bleed and earn it, and even then, you might not get the full manual. Steel yourself. Kaelan bowed with solemn respect. Thank you, Instructor Sun. Instructor Sun grunted. Yesterday's Warring Realms rankings, you saw it. Our sect leader broke one more sky than Arindra. Why did he still lose? Inferior technique. The leader's been drowning in sect affairs, let his training rot. This stumble might not be a bad thing, but it's a sharp warning for you lot. That's why everyone in this fortress trains the saber and nothing else. You know why. Kaelan didn't hesitate. Because the saber's the fastest to pick up. Even raw strength can hack out some force. At the beginner level, someone with a sword is at a disadvantage the moment they face you. The words hung in the air. The wind howled, and they stood in the churning snow, spray in silence. Instructor Sun's voice cut through like a blade. The saber, the most pragmatic weapon in the martial world. Kaelan's heart blazed with clarity. Extras used this weapon. Quick to learn, deadly on the edge, exactly what he wanted. The Bloodshed Art has its paired martial form, the Bloodfiend Saber Art, savage beyond compare. Since you're receiving this cultivation, you're qualified to learn it. Instructor Sun waved a hand in that blunt, bandit camp fashion. Come here daily. Start with saber fundamentals. Once your foundation is solid, I'll teach you the Bloodfiend Saber Art myself. No more words. Instructor Sun cut straight to the core. The Bloodshed Art has no standard meridian pathways. It relies on the blood force activation method. The foundational technique must be practiced alongside this movement. Watch closely. Kaelan's mind plunged deep. Instructor Sun's voice branded itself into his brain, character by character. Kaelan could almost see the tranquil blood force inside him stir like a waking stream, then churn and boil. A scorching heat detonated from his lower abdomen and shot through every limb. Hot. Like a gambler gone berserk at the table, blood surging to his head, reason snapping every fiber, screaming to shred everything in sight. Kaelan's vision tinged red. Stranger still, his legs aching and weak from just a few drills last night, were flooded with a current of heat. Muscles swelled, bones crackled softly. It felt as if a steel rod had been hammered into his spine, propping him bolt upright, banishing every trace of soreness. Strength. Surging, explosive strength. This was a demonic cultivation. Boom, a commotion erupted around him. Cooks pushed the meal cart out, and the smell of millet rice, mixed with wild greens, threaded with the faintest whiff of meat, lashed at everyone's nostrils like a whip. Kaelan's stomach spasmed. Hunger carved into him like a blade. He sprinted to his quarters, grabbed his bowl, and raced back. The line was already a dragon's tail. The cooks ladled with strict hierarchy. The size of the meat chunk was the yardstick of rank. When Kaelan's turn came, a thick slab of red, braised pork, bigger than what Garen got, slapped into his bowl with a wet thud. Instructor Sun's favor, made solid as stone. Kaelan shouldered through the crowd, bowl in hand, only to find Garen's gaunt, sneering face blocking his path. A whole slab of meat. Behind Garen, a handful of shadows shifted. Greed and venomous envy were almost solid in their eyes. A backstabber who climbed over young Lord's corpse. You think you deserve this. Kaelan's brows knotted. Garen didn't bother with more words. He flicked a hand. Take it. The thugs surged in from both sides. Kaelan shielded the bowl with one arm. Heavy blows hammered his back. Wild greens slopped out, broth splashing across his chest. The crowd pressed closer. Cheers, jeers, hissing whispers buzzed like flies. Garen's putting him in his place. Nicely done. Captain Fang wants him gone. What's Instructor Sun going to do, play favorites? No one saw Kaelan's fingers tightening around the bowl's rim. The heat of the Bloodshed Art ignited in that instant. The whites of Kaelan's eyes drowned in crimson. A scarlet film bled across his vision. His heart became a war drum, each beat forcing scalding blood into his limbs. A ravenous hunger, almost brutal. Not the stomach's hunger. The hunger of fists. Of knuckly bones. Every inch of skin, screaming to tear something apart. If I can't eat, you think you will. Kaelan hurled the bowl to the ground. Crack. The coarse ceramic shattered. Rice and porcelain shards sprayed. The braised meat tumbled into the dirt, coated in dust. Garen's crew froze. In the heartbeat every eye still clung to the wreckage. Kaelan moved. The muscles in his legs uncoiled like steel cables snapping. A spiderweb of cracks split the packed earth under his feet. He became a blur, closing 2 meters in a single explosive stride. His right hand clamped around Garen's collar like an iron vise. Too fast. Fast enough that even Kaelan felt a flicker of disorientation. The heat in his legs detonated like gunpowder, hurling his body through the air. Garen's pupils hadn't even contracted before his throat bones creaked under the stranglehold of his own collar. Trip! Kaelan's instep hooked Garen's ankle like a scythe. A violent twist. Garen left the ground, the world spinning. His spine hit the packed earth with a muffled crunch. Dust plumed. A seamless throw. Garen's scream never clawed free. Kaelan's left hand fisted in his topknot. Fingers, hooked like talons, knuckles jutting. He rammed Garen's skull down onto the shards and scattered rice. Eat. Let me feed you your fill. Garen's face ground into the mess of rice and broken porcelain. Sharp slivers sliced into his cheekbones. A wet tearing sound. A sticky grinding, like a dull blade sawing through damp cloth. Ah, Garen's scream ripped raw. Blood beaded and sprayed from between flesh and shard, spattering the back of Kaelan's hand. The crowd's noise was severed with a single stroke. Only a collective hiss of sucked breath remained. Garen's cronies finally snapped awake. They charged like madmen. A boot lashed into Kaelan's ribs. Hands clawed at his arm. Kaelan didn't budge. His knee pinned Garen's spine like a driven nail. Fists and feet hammered his body. He kept twisting Garen's head down again. And again. Into the broken bowl. Mechanical. Savage. The shards bit deeper. The sound of tearing flesh turned crisp, like crunching rock sugar. After 4 or 5 impacts, the men pulling at Kaelan started to back away. The men kicking him slowly withdrew their feet. Everyone watched as Kaelan slowly turned his head. His face was flecked with blood, expressionless, save for those searing red eyes still churning with unspent violence. What? Didn't he want my food? He overrate. And that's my fault. Kaelan's gaze swept over Garen's gang. His voice scraped like shards on rough stone. Anyone else hungry? On the ground, Garen was silent. Blood seeped along the cracks of the broken bowl, bead by bead, into the dirt. Kaelan rounded the corner. His back slammed against the rough stone wall. He slid down, strength gone, like a man gutted. The aftershocks of the Bloodshed Art ebbed like a tide. Needles of pain bloomed deep in every limb, stabbing and twisting in his muscles. Once the surging brutality drained, only an emptied void remained in his shell. Even his breath tasted of rust. Regret's instructor son leaned against the corner, arms folded, watching him. Kaelan lifted his eyes. Sweat traced the scar down his face. He didn't rise. His voice was a hoarse rasp. Nothing to regret. If I hadn't shown teeth from now on, I'd just hand my food over like a beaten dog. I asked, said instructor son, a faint smile playing at his lips, if you regret practicing the Bloodshed Art. That feeling of your reason slipping its leash, Kaelan was silent for a beat, then let out a dry chuckle. So, you know about the technique's problems. That's a relief. The art's damn fierce. Can't worry about the rest. He paused. Garen, dead. Instructor son's tone was as flat as crushing an ant. He dared snatch meat, I arranged. He provoked, he got killed. Stupid and weak. Dead is dead, Kaelan lowered his head. Thank you, instructor son. There's that civilized act again, instructor son sneered. I was there when you killed Valen. Saw you had guts and fire a born outlaw. That's why I gave you a few extra words. You think I favored you because your ass is tender, a born outlaw. Kaelan's lips twitched. He said nothing. The dying tremors of the Bloodshed Art still shivered in his nerve endings. He breathed his own clinging reek of blood and felt those words like a knife, splitting him clean from the conciliatory man he used to be. Instructor son stared coldly at him, each word dropping like a stone. You're already in the Jiang, who? The stone wall was ice. The back of Kaelan's skull pressed against the rough rock. His pupils shrank slightly. Those 4 words struck his eardrums like a boulder hurled into dead water. In the brief silence, he heard the last whisper of killing intent hissing in his blood before it subsided into stillness. Not enlightenment. Acceptance. Of a law woven into the world's very flesh. Instructor son turned and walked away. 1 hour. Find me to learn the blade. From now on, mornings for cultivation, afternoons for the saber, nights. Figure it out yourself. An hour later, Kaelan walked into the training ground, brimming with vigor. Instructor son flicked a glance at him, knowing exactly what the bastard had done. Kaelan had beaten every single one of Garen's cronies and snatched 3 heaping bowls of food, eaten with a clear conscience. When the others saw Kaelan approach, they flinched as one, instinctively parting to open a path. Expressionless, Kaelan walked through the gap and planted himself directly in the front row. Instructor Sun's eyes flickered with a trace of amusement before his voice dropped, grave and commanding. Among all weapons, the blade has the fewest fundamental motions, nothing more than cleaving, hacking, and upward slashing. Every variation stems from these roots. Even the most exalted blade arts cannot escape this law, and your fundamentals determine the ceiling of your future. How fast, how precise, how steady. It all depends on how deep your foundation runs. Instructor Sun drew the saber from his hip and slowed the motion to a crawl. A vertical cleave and a horizontal slash are not child's play. There is craft buried in the bones of them. Watch closely, Kaelan did not blink. As Instructor Sun's blade fell, Kaelan saw the air split along a hair, then seem nearly invisible. The edge had not yet landed, but the wind, pressure alone, blasted the fine dust on the ground outward in 2 directions. Kaelan raised a hand unbidden, tracing the motion in empty air. His arm muscles burned instantly the lingering debt of the morning's overexertion, the raw micro, tears from an afternoon of repeated swings. The Bloodshed Art stood quietly, threading strands of blood and Kai toward his arms. The soreness ebbed, but the clarity in his fingertips as they tracked that arc through the void sharpened, layer by layer. Vertical cleave. The blade's midline did not stray by a hair. Power launched from the spine, channeled through shoulder and wrist, the landing point anchored like a driven nail. Horizontal slash. Waist and hip torqued as one. The blade carved a circular path, and the wind screamed in 2 thin sheets where the edge passed. Sweat beaded fine across Kaelan's forehead. Through countless repetitions, muscle slowly etched its own memory. Kaelan could feel it, each swing steadier than the last by a thread. No illusion. Bone and sinew, torn down and rebuilt, had found the truest line. The afternoon dissolved in a blink. Dusk bled rust orange across the stone parapets. Kaelan slumped against a block of cut stone, kneading his arms with both hands. The ache was so deep he could barely lift them. The Bloodshed Art cycled on its own, numbing the tremors in his flesh with an eerie grace. Instructor Sun ambled over. You have instinct, that much is clear. One afternoon, and your form already holds shape. Go back now. There is a cut of meat waiting with your evening meal, our rule here. The best trainee each day earns meat. Let us see how many days you can keep it. Kaelan looked up. We just train and eat meat. No work details, we teach you martial arts. We feed you mate. You think we raise you for amusement. Instructor Sun's smile did not touch his eyes. Train like your life depends on it while you still can. If you die on a mission, I will simply have your corpse hauled off to feed the dogs. Kaelan shut his mouth. Instructor Sun turned away at his own unhurried pace. You have merit to your name, so you still enjoy some privileges. That brother of yours has already been sent out on mission. Who knows if your quarters will hold only one from now on. More space would be a comfort, no. The hands kneading Kaelan's arms stopped dead. A knot pulled tight in his chest. The mountain wind cut like a blade, hurling chips of ice against his face. Lyle dismissed his men and walked alone, legs dragging like they were filled with lead. A full day, and not even a ghost to show for it. Slush piled on his shoulders, freezing his threadbare clothes into a stiff carapace. Lyle's gaunt frame shivered in the gale, his lips gone blue, the chill burrowing under his fingernails. Behind him, muffled voices drifted from his subordinates. Chief Lowe's got spine. Said he'll take us out for a proper meal on his own coin another day. Lyle did not turn. He just raised a hand and waved them off. Passing the camouflaged entrance to the altar, Lyle's stride hitched for a single beat. A thin, cold smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth before flattening away. Lyle needed no one to tell him. Lyle had always known what this place was. Lyle had walked in by his own choice. Kaelan thought Lyle was an innocent swept along. Lyle almost laughed. Inside the steward's hall, a blistering tirade shook dust from the roof tiles. Lyle kept his head down, a placid smile fixed in place, revealing nothing. Predictable. Empty, handed trash did not deserve so much as a mouthful of food. Lyle stepped back out and cut toward the living quarters. The sun was sinking into the ridgeline, washing the whole stronghold in a murky patina of rust. Then Lyle saw Kaelan. The dying light slashed through the doorframe of the wooden shack ahead, carving the silhouette into sharp relief. Kaelan was locked in a horse stance, spine arched like a bowstring pulled to its limit. A book scroll sat in his left hand. His right hand raised a single-edged saber in a slow arc. The blade chopped down, a cold curve of light, biting hard into the wooden post before him. Missed! Kaelan pulled back, adjusted his breathing, raised the blade again, and cleaved down once more. Each stroke hunting the same cut, the same groove, though the post showed only a mess of crisscrossed scars. The figure stood against the light. Sweat streaked from Kaelan's jaw and smashed into the dirt, shattering into countless flecks of gold in the amber glow. Again. The hiss of the blade splitting the air was monotonous and stubborn, as if trying to carve that day, that earth, into his very bones. Lyle stared, lost in the sight. Kaelan turned, caught Lyle's eye, and his face lit up. You're back? The words landed so natural, as if Kaelan had been waiting all along. Something caught in Lyle's throat. He looked away. What are you so excited about? Worried about you. Kaelan sheathed his blade and ran his eyes over Lyle from top to bottom. Then a grin cracked his face. You're in one piece. That's all that matters. Did you eat? I ate. Right on cue, Lyle's stomach let out a loud, traitorous growl. His face flushed crimson. He glared like a cat with its tail stepped on. Kaelan didn't touch that thread. He just turned and stepped inside. Knew you wouldn't get fed out there. Saved you dinner. Still warm. Lyle followed, as if in a trance. On the table sat a bowl of leftover rice. A thin ring of steam clung to its rim, impossibly rich in that icebox of a hovel. Atop the rice rested a cut of meat. Fat and lean layered in perfect ratio, the grease slowly melting along the bowl's edge, pooling into an amber sheen. The juices had bled into the cracks between the grains. The aroma rose with the steam, thick and pungent, a fist of raw smoke and fire clamping around Lyle's stomach. For a man cold and empty all day, that scent was a whetted knife. Lyle stared at the meat. His throat bobbed. You need this more than I do right now. The words scraped out of his throat, dry and rough. Kaelan dropped onto a stool with a dismissive wave. Had 3 portions at noon. This is enough. There was no logic to that. Eating at noon did not mean going without at night. Lyle did not argue. He picked up his chopsticks in silence. The meat hit his tongue. Fat bloomed. The instant that rich oil burst across his palate, a knot cinched in his throat. A hot surge clawed at the backs of his eyes without warning. Lyle kept his head bowed low and swallowed, mouthful by mouthful, until his throat ached. Kaelan watched the dying sun beyond the doorway and suddenly spoke. Been turning something over in my head since before you got back. In what? Can we choose our targets? Kaelan's voice dropped low, the kind who flourish at others' expense. Like the Luo family. Rob them blind, and maybe you could even call it justice. Lyle's chopsticks stopped. He turned and stared at Kaelan for a long moment. Then a dry laugh escaped him. Here, I took you for a man of iron, and you're just this naive. Naive? Kaelan did not laugh. He lowered his eyes, his voice barely a murmur. Some things I really don't want to lose. Lyle's smile slowly faded. He looked down, prodding the remaining grains of rice. No mockery this time. We are in a den of demons. You think we get to choose. Lyle's voice was flat. You know better. It cannot be done. Can't do it now. Then get stronger. Kaelan's fierce gaze fixed on the split wooden stake outside the door. I've figured it out. This demon sect only respects strength. You're a squad leader. Your team can make some decisions. Make helmsman one day. Then you call the shots here, no? Kaelan paused, swallowing the rest. Some things didn't need spelling out. Get strong enough and you could just leave. This dump of a camp couldn't hold anyone. Lyle may or may not have caught the hidden edge in Kaelan's words. He just sighed softly. Hope you can keep your conscience and your innocence. Like this bowl of rice. He set down his chopsticks, his voice gentler. Thank you. TCH, that's rare. Kaelan grinned. Friends now. Lyle grunted an affirmative. In truth, they were more than friends. In this drafty bandit camp, Kaelan was the only warmth Lyle didn't need to guard against. But before that warmth could settle, Kaelan suddenly slammed the table. Then tonight we can share the bed, right? One gets the bed, the other the table. How much longer do we keep this up? Kaelan growled. I've had it. Tonight I'm sleeping in the damn bed, freezing my ass off. Lyle stared woodenly at Kaelan, the last trace of warmth in his eyes extinguished under that glare. Take the bed. Lyle's voice was ice. Or one day I'll die out there, and you won't have to fret about this anymore. Kaelan slapped his chopsticks on the table. Why the drama? If you were a woman, I'd go sell my ass to Instructor, son, tomorrow morning, to swap rooms. You're a man. Then we share the bed tonight. Lyle jabbed at the piece of meat in his bowl he'd been saving. He brought it to his lips, then put it down. After a long moment, he suddenly lifted his chin. Fine, we share. Think I'm scared of you. The bed was big enough. Straw mattress, an old blanket spread over it, 2 thin quilts neatly separated. As squad leaders, Kaelan and Lyle got better treatment than the Rankand, vile cultists. Outside, the snow reflected the cold moonlight. Kaelan, bare-chested, had muscles steaming white mist in the freezing air. Blade bit into the steak. One strike. Another. The shriek of the blade tearing air, the dull crack of the steak. Regular as a pile driver in the silent snowy night, each blow ricocheting off the echo wall, sending back rings of hard, cold ripples. Lyle had long since burrowed into the quilt by the wall, eyes wide open, watching that tireless silhouette by the door. The blade traced a steady arc under the moonlight, each strike landing on the same spot. Wood chips sprayed like a mist of blood. Kaelan had been at it so long he hadn't even turned his head once. Lyle curled his lip. Training that hard, your muscles don't ache. Without turning, Kaelan landed another chop. Bloodshed Art has a trick to it. No soreness, just fatigue. Basically, it burns blood and Kai. Strong in the moment, weak after. Lyle mused, his voice low. Demonic arts are indeed twisted. Normal cultivation takes a month just to sense Kai, and that's a genius. You've had 2 days. Has to have some trick to it, or who the hell would practice it? You were fighting someone today. Lyle suddenly sat up, expression hardening. Who? Kaelan finally turned, grinning. Gonna stand up for me. Lyle's face went cold. Of course, I'm much better than you. Then what are you afraid of? Sleeping. Scared I'll cuddle you. Piss off. Lyle thumped back onto the bed, facing the wall. Next time something like this happens, call me. 2 days of training. Don't be reckless. That big body looks intimidating, but it's hollow. Warmth spread in Kaelan's chest, but his mouth kept going. I'm chopping 500 more. Madmen! The blade light grew fiercer. From shoulder to wrist, muscles pulled into steel, like arcs as the edge bit precisely into the old gash on the steak. The crack of splintering, wood sharper with each strike. Lyle lay with his back to Kaelan, eyes wide open. In the dark, he watched the rising and falling blade shadows cast on the wall by the snow light. Unspeakable hatred churned in his eyes, mixed with a flicker of undeniable shock. Finally, he sighed and closed his eyes. He seemed asleep, but in truth his internal energy flowed silently through his meridians. One within, one without, one still, one moving. 2 people in the snowy night, each burning in silence. Kaelan had no idea how many times he chopped. Sweat rolled from his forehead into his eyes, blurring his vision, but the blade landed more and more precisely. The cut on the steak grew thinner, deeper, as if struck 1,000 times by the same blade. Kaelan stopped, panting, and looked at the straight knife line on the steak. He grinned. Shit, stinking sweat. Kaelan wiped off sweat and pushed open the door. The figure on the bed flinched, pressing further toward the wall. Not asleep. Your chopping's like hammering iron. Who could sleep? Kaelan draped his sweat-soaked shirt on the chair back and slid bare, chested under the quilt. I won't practice at night anymore. Don't stop. Lyle's voice was hard. If you want speed, ignore petty stuff. As for others' lives, let them die. Kaelan said nothing more. The quilt was thin, the straw rustled beneath them. When Kaelan lay down, the bed planks dipped slightly, and on the other side, Lyle shrank another half, inch toward the wall. Back to Kaelan, wrapped in the quilt, his body tense as a drawn bow. Kaelan truly had no improper thoughts. Exhausted, his eyelids too heavy to lift, his mind a muddled mess. Only one thought flickered through. Better she's not a damn woman. That'd just be trouble. Then the snoring started. Like thunder, Lyle lay rigid, curled against the wall, fingers clenching the quilt edge until his knuckles whitened. Kaelan didn't pull him close. The snoring grew louder, rhythmic as a pile driver, vibrating the straw mattress. Lyle waited a long time, then slowly turned over. In the dark, the profile of Kaelan's face was hard and chiseled as a blade. Moonlight leaked through the window lattice, illuminating the scar on Kaelan's face with stark clarity. Lyle's eyes remained open, watching for a long, long time. The room fell silent save for the snoring. Next morning, after Lyle left, Kaelan headed straight for the training ground. His progress in Bloodshed Art was abnormally fast. When he circulated his energy, his blood boiled, and even his saber practice felt accelerated. Uneasy, he needed to ask Instructor Son. Fast. Instructor Son lifted his chin indifferently. Circulate your power. Hit me with everything you've got. Kaelan sank his stance, elbow dropped, fist chambered at his waist. With a thought, Bloodshed Art roared to life. Magma seemed to surge through his meridians, heat blooming instantly. Every inch of muscle swelled and bulged, a baleful aura tinging his vision a faint scarlet. How? Kaelan stepped, twisted, and threw the punch. His fist tore the air with a sharp whistle. Instructor Son's eyelid twitched. His casually raised palm suddenly tensed, his sleeve billowing backward from the force of the punch, snapping loudly. Bang! The muffled impact of fist against palm drowned out the wind. A tremendous force slammed back into Kaelan, sending him stumbling backward, step after step. The scarlet blaze in his eyes vanished in an instant. Instructor Son stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His voice came out flat. Progress is indeed a bit fast. Behind his back, Instructor Son's hand clenched silently, knuckles cracking with a faint, dry pop. His face remained utterly unreadable. Your comprehension is passable, but the real reason is your body's foundation. It is absurdly good. Your blood and chi surge like someone far above a pauper's station. Add to that your primal young intact, your essence overflowing. A true case of hot, blooded vigor. Kaelan never noticed that trembling hand hidden behind the instructor's back. He just listened, every word sinking in. Instructor Son's tone held level. At this pace, with a month of diligent training, you can breach the first layer. Once that breaks open, the first profound gate will follow. That is the demonic path for you. In time, you will understand the cost. Kaelan clicked his tongue silently. One profound gate in a single month. Instructor Son shifted his weight. Do not neglect your blade work. The 3 forms from yesterday. How many repetitions? I set 1,000 reps. Lost count halfway through chopping. Should be about right. A pause. Instructor Son's throat bobbed. He pointed toward a wooden post. See that old blade scar in the middle? Strike there. One cut, Kaelan drew his saber. The rough hilt bit into his palm, calluses scraping against the cord wrap, the sensation sharp as teeth, sinking into flesh. He dragged a deep breath, locked his eyes onto that shallow white scar, raised the blade high above his head. The after echoes of the Bloodshed Art still twitched in his muscles. But the saber held unnervingly steady, a flash of edge light. Down it cleaved. The arc tracked the imagined line, then strayed a hair at the very point of impact. Thunk! The blade bit into the post, just a whisker off the old scar. Instructor Son drew a long breath. His taut shoulders sagged, almost imperceptibly. Good enough, Kaelan frowned, staring at that skewed cut. Not good enough. I will drill more today. Instructor Son slanted him a look. Then, suddenly, he grinned. I said good enough because your blade talent, at least, is not as monstrous as your Bloodshed Art. But the fact that you would swing 1,000 times over a single error. Most so-called geniuses could never manage that. He paused, deliberate and slow. If you keep training like this, one day your Trarubazdinif Dulbzues will surpass anything I ever imagined. Kaelan said nothing. He simply re-gripped the hilt, his gaze homing back onto that old scar. Damn it all. Cannot land a single clean cut. Then cut until it is clean. Dusk bled red across the sky. Kaelan sheathed his saber and clapped a heavy hand onto the bandit's shoulder beside him. Smack! The weight of that palm sagged the man's shoulder in a visible slump. His knees nearly buckled. A fawning smile plastered itself across his face by pure reflex.
Next time we get leave to carouse, I am treating the brothers to drinks. Naturally, we will all be toasting Boss Zhao instead. The band, its laugh came oiled with deference.
Just the sheer gall of Boss Zhao gutting Kaelan in one single thrust. That alone deserves a round from every man here. You were there that day. We were not there, of course. But these past few days, the senior brothers in the cult have been talking. The bandit dropped his voice, eyes darting. Over a decade ago, the Emperor traveled incognito and lodged with the Luo family. Lord Luo, that old turtle, curried favor by sending his own wife to attend the honored guest. Kaelan's eyes snapped frozen. Kaelan might be the Emperor's own spawn. The bandit slapped his thigh. That is why the royal house granted special protection to the Luo family. That day, the Luo estate hid imperial masters within its walls. If not for the Scarlet Venerable striking personally, how could we have ever pulled it off? Think it through, boss. Whose family just happens to have imperial masters lying in wait. Kaelan forced one word through his throat. Shit, the bandit worked himself into a froth, spittle flying. Everyone always whispered the Luo family had deep ties to the royal house, but no one dared say it plain. Not that they did not get it. They simply did not dare. But now, we are the holy cult. We defy this rotten dynasty. We kill this dog, fart of a prince, he was just a bastard. The title will not hold for long. Kaelan crushed down the churning in his gut, kept his voice flat, and moved to end the conversation. Just a bastard, the bandit's eyes bulged wide. No, boss, you truly do not grasp it. The crown prince is already dead.
The Emperor has no other sons. Kaelan's turning motion froze mid-step.
A crow cawed from the woods at that exact moment, splintering the dead silence. Once the crown prince died, Kaelan's status shifted entirely. The bandit rambled on, unstoppable. Kaelan pieced the whole shape together from those jabbering lips. The crown prince had perished that very same afternoon, mere hours before Kaelan's blade cut Kaelan down. Kaelan had become the sole heir, and his saber had just lopped off the imperial bloodline's very last branch. The blood god cult's march south was no coincidence. Chief Tang's words now rang truer than ever. This matter carries a weight beyond your knowing. Something detonated inside Kaelan's chest. So that was it. The position. The palace. The dragon throne. The riddle that had been lodged in his ribs all these days cracked open with a roar. The black confusion that had pooled inside him was ripped away. He threw his head back and laughed at the sky. Ha ha ha. The wild sound tore through the trees, startling a flock of birds into frantic flight. But those eyes held no laughter. Only a blade, sharp ferocity that flared bright and then vanished. That wretched Kaelan. Let that waste ascend the throne, and the realm would truly suffer. I cut him down. Might as well have rid the world of a great pest. With that single thought, the last shadow of unease scattered like smoke. A clean, bright relief washed through him, sharp as cleaving a knotted rope with one perfect stroke. Grinning, he clapped the bandit's shoulder again. Thanks, brother. When he turned, his steps landed steadier than they had before. Life still rolled onward. He had lingered too long in chatter. Had to hurry and bring dinner back for Lyle. But the hut stood empty. Later than the day before. Kaelan set the food on the table, his brow furrowing. He paced. Dry twigs snapped under his boots, every single crackle jarring in the gathering dusk. His gaze swept again and again toward the empty road at the stockade gate. Yesterday, he had worried Lyle might run headlong into trouble. Nothing happened. That did not mean the danger was not real. It could come on any day. Restlessness crawled up his spine like ants. He could not wait any longer. He snatched up his long saber and made for the door. A few strides out, a leisurely figure emerged from the stockade entrance. Lyle strolled back, hands clasped behind her. She blinked at his frantic stance. Then her eyes curved upward. I am back. I am back. Kaelan's eyes flared bright. The agitation snuffed out the instant he saw those crescent eyes. Why so late today, wait? No, his nose twitched. Something is off with your smell. What happened to that reek you could catch upwind? Went for a bath in the mountain stream out back. Lyle's eyes curved even more, the corners of her mouth tugging irrepressibly upward. If I stank any longer, I swear I would start growing lice. Winter swimming. Hardcore, Kaelan itched to try it himself. but wavered. The weather alone made a man shiver just peeling off his clothes, let alone plunging in. You should go too. You stink to high heaven. Who is going to sleep next to you? Lyle thrust her hidden hands forward, producing a wine gourd and an oil paper packet. Hot wine and charred meat fragrance burst into the air, drilling straight into his nose. Brought you warm wine. Figured it would do you some good. Kaelan stared blankly. Where did you get this? I went into town today. Lyle stuffed the gourd and packet into his arms. Some grilled meat, too. A reward for training hard. The warmth seeped through the paper and straight into his chest. Kaelan looked down at his arms, then up at Lyle's smiling eyes. You plan to coast on this stuff. Does not matter how much coin you brought from home. It will not last. Today I sent them out to hunt. Winter game is scarce, but we scraped together some pheasants and rabbits. We wrapped up early, so I found the time to slip into the city. Lyle's face hardened in an instant. Spit it out. Do you want it or not? Enough chatter. Yes, yes, yes. Kaelan snatched the wine gourd and the oil paper bundle, spinning on his heel and barreling out. I will eat by the water, then dive in while the heat is on me. Lyle stepped into the room, unrushed. Her gaze fell on the table. The food was still there. She paused for just an instant. The rice in the coarse clay bowl had already cooled a few degrees. The side dishes were the plainest pickled vegetables and a scant few strips of dried meat, laid out neat and precise, clearly set aside for her. The embers in the stove still glowed, their faint light catching the bowl's rim with a warm, glossy sheen. Lyle watched for a beat. The corner of her mouth lifted. A shallow arc, there and gone. Every last scrap of silver she had went into that gourd of wine and that oil, paper parcel of cooked meat. You saved me a meal. I will fetch you wine. Plain and proper. A clamor drifted in from the stronghold gate. No, leaving the stronghold at night. Since when was there a curfew? Waving a chicken feather like a royal decree. All this shit just because I want to step out for a wash. Boss Zhao, it is you lot. You drew gate duty, eh? All right, we are on the same side here. Step aside. If you had said it was Boss Zhao sooner, we would never have blocked the way. The voices receded into the distance. Lyle sat at the table, chewing a mouthful of rice with deliberate slowness. She let out a dry laugh. Few days, and already a boss. There was no simple village boy here. This was a born creature of the Jiang, who, adapting to the demons, den faster than she ever had. He smiled and shook his head, setting down his chopsticks. He climbed onto the bed and shut his eyes, cycling his energy through dozens of rippling meridians. Footsteps sounded. Lyle opened his eyes. That was fast, he said. Kaelan strode through the door, wrapped in a cloud of moisture. Water clung to the ends of his hair, freezing white frost lining his temples. But he looked utterly refreshed, his eyes alarmingly bright. Got to the shore and figured, how can a man drink alone? Of course I came back to share it with you. Without ceremony, he grabbed a bowl and tipped the gourd. Amber wine crashed into the bottom, kicking up fine spray. Thunk the rough clay bowl hit the table with enough force to jolt the wood. The liquid sloshed wildly, chaotic ripples ringing out. Kaelan slid the other bowl across to Lyle. It wasn't as cold as I thought. I'm tough as hell. Next time we go together, who's going with you? Lyle curled his lip, watching the wine slowly calm. Thin white steam rose from the heated liquor, wrapped around a sharp, warm aroma. His mood lifted for no reason as he picked up the bowl and fumbled for words. I saw your wanted poster at the city gate. The imperial court is serious. With that face, going abroad won't be so easy from now on. That figures. Kaelan settled across from him, his voice dropping low. Heard something today about why the Luo family was wiped out. That Valen bastard is supposedly a prince. You were at the manor for so long. Did you ever glimpse any dragon's aura on that wretch? Lyle's hand trembled faintly as he took the bowl. Wine rippled out in fine lines, struck the rim, and rebounded, like something unnameable in his own heart, vanishing as soon as it stirred. He recovered at once, smiling unaffected. That's a shocking reason. You really will need to be careful when you go out. Kaelan thought nothing of it. He raised his bowl with a grin. Big bowls of wine, big chunks of meat. When I was a kid, reading Outlaws of the Marsh, it always felt so heroic. But now I'm actually stuck in a band, its nest, the meats doled out by the sliver, the wine I bought myself, and I'm still stingily splitting one bowl.
Disillusioning, Lyle laughed in spite of himself.
What you're describing is a mountain king. A big chief, at least.
But you, I can see it, a bit tough.
To be a big chief, you've got to at least be a formal cultist. We haven't even found the doorway into the cult yet.
They say you need faith to get in, but nobody's come to preach at us. Instructor Sun doesn't handle that, and the helmsman just won't see anyone. Lyle sipped his wine, his eyes flicking over Kaelan's face.
From your attitude, you don't much care. I care a little.
What I want is the blood god art, not some bloodshed art. Kaelan drained the last of his bowl and slammed it down. Of course, getting into the Four Symbols sect would be even better. But look around, some people cultivate the blood god art, and they still get beaten by a lower realm. Lyle nearly choked on his wine, pressing his lips together to suppress the laugh.
Clearly, Urindra Alaric's fight had ground Kaelan's expectations about the blood god cult into dust.
Kaelan poured himself another half bowl, but his eyes darkened. Still, there's no rush.
It's just the beginning. Who knows, maybe the helmsman will be dismissed tomorrow. If Instructor Sun takes over, my days will be a lot smoother. He's been decent to me, a nice dream. Lyle set his bowl down.
Captain Feng isn't off hiding for fun.
He's probably preaching in the city.
It's just that when I went in today, I saw no sign of the demon sect's sermons. It's likely a hard start, and they haven't officially moved yet. Not necessarily. Kaelan's voice dropped abruptly, like a blade scraping against a whetstone, cutting into an entirely different register. His body leaned forward, without thought, the lines of his shoulders and back tightening. Wet hair fell across half his face, the remaining eye gleaming fiercely in the dim lamplight.
Don't you think this sub-branch is very strange? Lyle's chest tightened.
He didn't want this conversation, but Kaelan was staring, and he could only play dumb.
What do you mean the sub-branch is new?
But that underground altar, it's absolutely not newly dug. Kaelan pronounced each word like a hammer fall. That's a massive engineering feat. Obviously, it's a hidden site left by someone else long ago, found by the Blood God cult, and they built their stronghold and sub-branch right next to it. That's normal.
Use whatever ground's already there. Then what reason do they have to establish a sub-branch in deep winter?
Kaelan fixed him with his stare.
A sect that big, and they didn't prepare to set up a sub-branch earlier. They wait till the freezing snow and ice to move, short of food and clothes. What for? Pure misery.
Hierarch Zhu lost his mind. Lyle was momentarily tongue-tied.
It was near here that Urindra accidentally overheard their plan to strike the Luo family.
Hierarch Zhu was here too. Kaelan threw back the rest of his wine, drops trailing down his chin and spattering the table. That means something critical is hidden here.
The Blood God cult's main force pushed into this wasteland for a reason. The sect master himself came.
Killing Valen interrupted them, but the work shouldn't have been finished.
The master couldn't stay, so he left men to build a new sub-branch in the dead of winter and keep searching. He smashed the empty bowl onto the table.
Clang! The crisp crack of ceramic on wood burst through the cramped room. The wine bowl jumped, residual wine sloshing and spilling. The yellow lamplight flickered, throwing their two shadows against the wall like silent blades.
Kaelan leaned low, his voice scraping out from his throat.
I strongly suspect this goes beyond the Blood God cult.
The root lies in the Four Symbols sect.
Getting into the Four Symbols sect, learning the Blood God art, there's merit to be found right here. Keep your eyes open.
You won't go wrong. Lyle's eyes were dark pools fixed on the empty bowl.
The room fell silent, nothing left but the crackle of flame licking the wick.
After a moment, he raised his head and suddenly smiled.
Drinking is drinking.
So much talk. You keep yapping about being a man, but I've never seen you act so decisive. Shit, come on, 3 bowls dry.
This gourd won't pour 3 bowls. Whatever it has. Lyle lifted
his bowl, a faint smile on his lips.
Under the lamplight, the 2 bowls clinked hard-ting, a crisp, clear chime, clean and sharp. The hot wine went down.
A spicy warmth burned from the tip of the tongue all the way to the stomach, raising a thin sweat, every pore opening wide.
Kaelan drank with gusto, threw his head back and drained it. He exclaimed, drinking hot wine in winter, fucking brilliant. 2 blotches of red spread across Lyle's cheeks, yet a mist lingered in his eyes, unreadable. Until the last drop was gone, he looked down at the empty bowl and suddenly spoke. His voice was soft as snow falling outside. Kaelan, in times like these, don't trust people too easily. Keep those analyses in your heart. Why speak them aloud? Kaelan blinked.
What can't I say to you? I wouldn't blab to anyone else. Don't trust anyone lightly. Lyle paused. Including me. He set down the bowl and stood, adding, including Instructor son, who you think treats you well. Kaelan looked up at him, the alcohol hitting, his gaze a little glazed. You're not drunk, are you? Lyle smiled, stretching lazily like someone weak to liquor. Yeah, my tolerance is shit. I'm turning in. He made to turn. Kaelan shot to his feet. The wine surged, blood rushing to his head. Before his brain caught up, his hand was already reaching out. Fingers spread, he clamped down on Lyle's shoulder. The muscles in his arm tightened, veins faintly bulging under the damp sleeve. Force poured into his fingertips and pressed solidly into Lyle's thin shoulder blade. Under his palm, those shoulders gave an almost imperceptible hitch, like a string plucked violently, then pressed dead still. Lyle, Kaelan, oblivious, grinned. You're kind of a lightweight. Only a few cups. Lyle had no time to dodge. A burning palm locked onto her shoulder and arm, and she slammed into Kaelan's chest. That body was hard as a red, hot iron plate. The rough feel shot up the back of her neck through the fabric. Male scent mixed with alcohol blasted into her ear. Her mind buzzed, heart hammered, and she froze into a statue. TCH, skinny as a twig. Kaelan's big hand kneaded her shoulder, his rough knuckles grinding over her shoulder, blade through the thin shirt, like a brand searing ice. You can only train internal energy. In a world without it, I could take on 10 of you. Go sleep, go sleep. I'll practice more. The hot wine stirs the blood. Training might be even better. His hand jerked away. Kaelan had already strode outside, dropping into a horse stance, his back stiff as a plank. Lyle stood rooted, stiffly turning her head toward the door. Just being grabbed like that. For men, an arm around the shoulder was probably nothing, yet her whole body still tingled numb, her ear burning as if dripping blood, that rough palm still pressing on her shoulder. The current undimmed. Outside, Kaelan was equally full of regret. After drinking, seeing Lyle's flushed cheeks and pretty face, he'd let his mind wander and deliberately used the chance to confirm gender. Confirmed it now, that shoulder was soft, impossible to hide. She was a woman. Now the groping was done, but his erection wouldn't go down, and he could only cover it with the horse stance. Worse, how would they face each other later? He'd said 2 guys is easier, and now this awkwardness was all his own doing. He ground his back teeth, wanting to slap himself. Inside the room, outside the room, both stood frozen. Thoughts whirled through Lyle's mind like a storm. She should have killed him long ago. But now she couldn't bring herself to do it. And she couldn't leave this room. Couldn't share it with another man. Couldn't leave, couldn't hide. Yet today, her heart felt slack. Since they'd slept in that same bed, he hadn't groped a single inch. Maybe she could trust him. Trust. The word hit her like ice. She smiled. A brilliant, dangerous smile. She strode out with long steps. She hooked an arm over Kaelan's shoulder. Her limb wrapped around his stiff neck, warm and real. She leaned close to his ear. Hey, Kaelan's muscles locked. Yes. What, your horse stance is off today. Practicing like that will cause problems. Lyle's breath was orchid, warm, ghosting over his ear. His stance nearly buckled. Could be the wine's got you thinking of something improper. That's no good. Want your buddy here to take you to the city brothels for some fun. Kaelan's Adams apple bobbed. His voice came out hoarse. Aren't you the one who never touches anyone? Why the arm over my shoulder? Lyle tightened her hold without a thought. We weren't close before. Now we're brothers. You can throw an arm over me, I can't do the same. Kaelan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But that body leaning into him, a faint, elusive fragrance, the soft arm, her breath in his ear. He realized with despair his horse stance couldn't hide a thing. Lyle caught his awkward posture from the corner of her eye. A trace of satisfied cunning flickered in her gaze. She quickly suppressed a strange flutter in her chest. Letcha, she cursed silently. Night fell. The wooden hut was cramped, the darkness thick as ink. They lay side by side on the hard pallet. So close they could hear the whisper of each other's hair against the straw mat. Kaelan, uncharacteristically, turned onto his side. He curled up, eyes wide in the dark, not a trace of sleep. Beside him, Lyle's breathing was light but never steadied. She closed her eyes, trying to regulate her breath. But her nose filled with soap sent from his clothes and a faint male smell. Concentration shattered. In the darkness, 2 breaths rose and fell, stiff and guarded, neither daring to move. Kaelan counted his heartbeats. Lyle pressed her fingertips.
Each cursed the other 800 times in their minds. Deep into the night, Kaelan finally let out a faint snore. Lyle's taut string abruptly slackened. She sank into chaos. Next morning, before the cook arrived with steamed buns, Lyle jolted awake. Blinking groggily, her mind exploded. What hard pillow! She was nestled in the warm hollow of Kaelan's shoulder, her nose full of his clean, heated neck scent. One arm wrapped unconsciously around his waist. Her palm rested on his firm abdomen. Her blood froze. Carefully, she began to withdraw her hand. The bedding rustled faintly. Barely breathing, she inched her arm back, then wrapped the disheveled blanket tight around herself. Her heart pounded hard enough to crack her ribs. Kaelan snored on, seemingly oblivious. Outside, the cook's footsteps sounded. 2 knocks on the door. Kaelan's eyes sprang open like a released spring. He stretched, turned his head, and grinned at her. Mourning Lyle's heart, which had leaped to her throat, slammed back down. Forcing calm, she patted his shoulder in a brotherly way. Her voice came out slightly hoarse. Go get the food. Kaelan's movement to get out of bed paused for an instant. He hunched over, awkwardly shifting off the pallet. His gait was deliberate and miserable. Lyle's gaze swept over his rigid back. In a flash, she understood everything. He hadn't just woken up. He'd been awake long ago, feigning sleep, using that embarrassing posture to hide his body's natural reaction. Lyle's face remained blank, but a flush of heat rose to her cheeks. Kaelan turned back with the steamed buns. Their eyes met and broke apart instantly. He woodenly tossed a bun her way. I'm going to train. Lyle reached up and caught it. As he turned, she clapped him hard on the shoulder, her eyes crinkling. Go on then. Kaelan's shoulder dipped under the weight. That soft touch seared through the fabric. His whole body went rigid like a lightning strike. Then he bolted out the door in long, pounding strides. Lyle withdrew her hand. She looked down, tearing at a cornmeal bun. The corner of her mouth caught between a smile and a bite. That much heat, and he still plays straight, she muttered. Kaelan felt like a student singled out by the lecturer. The image of Lyle's face, lifting drowsily from his shoulder, shattered into bright motes. The words escaped before he could stop them. Instructor Sun's face was a thunderhead. Yesterday, I praised your diligence. Today, you've got your head in the clouds. Tell me the slanting upward slash I just taught. What's the key point? Upward slash. The word slash snagged. Kaelan bit deep into the tip of his own tongue. Blood iron flooded his skull. He dropped his gaze, knuckles bursting white around the hilt. Please, Instructor Son, teach it once more. I'll punish myself today. 3,000 repetitions. From that moment, the blade. Song became the only sound on Barrow Mountains. Over 20 days. Chop, sever, thrust, slash. From before the sun clawed over the hills to after the frost, moon drowned in the west. Rust, scent, and salts, wet crusted into blood scabs on Kaelan's palm, only to be ground raw again by the grip. Meals, sleep, and the unspoken understanding with Lyle about bathing separately, everything else was nailed to the training yard. Stationary dumb gave way to hurtling, mobile targets. Iron staves arced through the freezing air, old notches carved into them like the eyes of prey. Instructor Sun hurled his staff at random. Kiang, the blade, Song sheared the wind. A silver edge traced a trajectory so precise it felt cruel, biting savagely into that old notch. The metallic shriek drilled into the eardrums. The iron staff dropped into the snow like a shot bird. Instructor Sun bent and picked it up. His callous thumb, coarse as grit, scraped gently across the surface. New and old marks aligned without a sliver of deviation, as if measured by the same cold rule. The muscle at the corner of his eye twitched, burying his shock. Half a lifetime training bandits, and Instructor Sun had never seen a person like this. Now Kaelan's face, still bearing the raw edges of youth from 20, some days ago, was carved sharp. Blue-black stubble, a blade scar cutting across the brow. Steam from evaporating sweat swirled with his heavy breath. Muscle coiled like corded stone. But when his eyes lifted, they spat a feral gleam. Sometimes even the ravening violence of something hunting. Like a wolf-driven half, mad, sprinting for its life on a knife's edge with a tiger at its heels. Oblivious to it all, Kaelan tilted his head back and gulped raw liquor from his gourd. His throat worked. Liquor spilled wildly from the corners of his mouth, soaking into his sweat-drenched collar. The gourd was the cheapest rubbish. He'd never replaced it. Instructor's son pressed a pill into his palm. The meaning heavy. Kaelan, your blade work is complete. Tonight, go back and break into the first level of the Bloodshed Art. Breach the first profound gate. This will aid you. Tomorrow, you'll learn Traribaz Dinif Dulbzues. The wooden door swung open. A billow of hot steam surged out first, beating the winter solstice's biting cold 3 steps back. Lyle was setting a bowl on the table. The Tanguan inside had just left the pot. Their sweet mist blurred the dim lamplight. Lyle's fingertips were faintly red from the heat. When she looked up, her eyes flickered, quickly masked by a stiff face. Oh, the handsome little tyrant's back. Sit, sit. This humble servant shall serve your lordship's meal. Kaelan dropped into his seat with a sprawling authority and let out a short laugh. Some good news. You only clown around when you're in a good mood. When you're not, your face looks like I owe you 8 million. Good news. Lyle slammed the bowl down in front of him with a clatter, teeth gritted. I heard them gossiping again, saying I'm your secret pet. What the hell is wrong with these people? We're both men. How can their minds even go there? Kaelan lowered his head and sipped his liquor. Wisely, he let that one pass. Lyle smacked the table in fury. And besides, a brute like you counts as handsome. Look in a mirror. Do you even deserve the title? Checked this morning. Handsome enough to wake me up, Lyle choked mute. This morning she'd been nestled in the hollow of Kaelan's shoulder. He'd simply hauled her up and tossed her aside like a sack of sand. Kaelan realized his blunder. Desperate for a shift, he said. Winter solstice today. A festival, winter solstice. Lyle fell abruptly quiet. She turned to fetch a bowl. The wooden ladle scooped Tanguan, with motions a beat slower than before. Luo Manor's custom is Tanguan for the solstice. Same in your Zhao village, isn't it? From the sound of it, you know other customs too. Thought you'd never set foot outside. Can't I listen to people talk? They said eat dumplings, couldn't be bothered. Lyle pushed the bowl towards him, still simmering with indignation. I don't think you like dumplings anyway. The one interesssed's probably Sisson, Law. Kaelan's words slipped out before he could stop them. I haven't even gotten a taste of you. Why the hell would I go for Sisson? Law, dead stop. Inside the wooden hut, only the firewood crackled. Sweet Tanguan steam rose, smearing their expressions into a soft haze. Lyle sat, her face a mask, not looking at Kaelan. He reached out to take the bowl. Their fingertips met above the rim. A chance encounter. Lyle's fingers went faintly rigid. Kaelan's knuckle brushed past her cold, flush joint. The contact was feather, light, almost a trick of the mind. Kaelan took the bowl, casual as anything, and scooped a mouthful. Passed my blade assessment today. Instructor's son gave me a breakthrough pill. Lyle's gaze snapped to him. He swallowed a Tanguan whole. His words came wrapped in scorching sweetness, calm as announcing tomorrow's weather. I'll break through the first tier tonight.